Okay, guys. Well, thank you for participating today. Um, participating today in the conversation. I'm really happy to have you all here, and really hope to spur some good, just insights about how y'all came to be in business, what lessons you've learned. So today, for those of you watching, this is the food and beverage track is part of Startup Week, San Antonio. And so through Launch SA, we're helping program out some content regarding food and beverage. And today we have two companies here that are at the cusp of food and beverage entrepreneurship. They're at the very beginning stage too, considering not only is it the beginning of their journeys in certain aspects, but also like in some general sense, maybe even their lives, because they're in college right now, or at least they have recently been in college, if not as of right now. So on I'm not going to presume that the sides are the same for me, but we have from QuickSip, Jacob Hurl Zeidelman, and then from Thoughtfull, we have Cannon Wilson and Amy Platter. So I am very excited to have them today. They're, both participants from the Stumberg competition at Trinity. They also both have gone on to, through our Break Fast and Launch program through Launch SA. So there's a lot to check out there. But before I really cut up your intro stories, I'd really like for y'all to provide some insight for yourself. So we can start with the senior statesman here, Jacob, and then we can go with the younger bunch from Thoughtfull. So I'd love to just start out with what is your how did you get to where you are today? What is the story of QuickSip? Was it quick?
Absolutely. So thank you all for having this. I think it's a great event, and I'm glad that Startup Week is allowed to continue on safely as possible. So QuickSip started out of Trinity University, right where Cannon and Amy are sitting today. And it was in the beginning entrepreneurship class, which is essentially just a place where everybody gets together and says some bad ideas and hopefully one sticks to the wall, right? And our bad idea was starting a bar and coffee shop on St. Mary's Strip that would focus on quick quality. I don't know if anyone is familiar with St. Mary's Strip, but it's not the bougiest place on earth. It's definitely not the Pearl that's a mile down the road, right? So we wanted to have some sort of intermediary stop between your morning work, which could be your office downtown, for your coffee in the morning, so you can have a quick quality cup, and then also when you're going out on the weekends, to be able to have sort of a quick craft cocktail before you go on your way down the strip. That idea lost its steam pretty quickly with the lack of capital and the lack of age that we had at the time. But we did meet a lot of people in both the coffee and bar industries, mostly the brewery side, not necessarily some of the bars, but just learning about how we could kind of morph the two. And of course, realize that a brick and mortar wasn't in our cards, and became very good friends with James over at Pulp Coffee, who helped us develop a product in the very beginning, and then also just taught me everything I know about coffee, which when I was 19 and quite ignorant about this space, was how to pop a plastic cup into a Keurig machine. But kind of the development of myself within the coffee scene allowed us to understand what the market needed, which was quality coffee on the retail shelf, that being in grocery stores or little specialty stores, bodegas. And then we just headed on with that, staying with our cold brew coffees that are prepackaged, so we could bring the quality to the consumer as quickly and as easy as possible.
Awesome, thank you. I'll probably dig into a few of the things that you said in a minute, but I want to pass it over to the Thoughtfull team for their introduction.
Thanks, Ryan. So Thoughtfull started over a year ago to solve the gap in convenient and healthy snacks on college campuses. That was our inspiration, because we looked around and there was really not anything that would help you fuel your body with something that would make you feel good here on campus. So we started working on that, got into, like you said, the Break Fast and Launch program. And then when, you know, we had a life-altering event with mental health, and we saw really about how it's super important and how it's underserved in society, and started looking for ways that we could improve that cause with our expertise in snacks. So Thoughtfull makes energy bites for mental health. Our tagline is self-care in a snack. We put some natural active ingredients into our like really tasty, convenient, portable energy bites that help reduce stress and improve focus. So it's a snack that will keep you going physically, but also mentally. So our point of differentiation is really the mental health aspect.
And Amy, would you like to add anything to that intro?
Just definitely kind of reiterate some of that. So we're both really passionate about health and wellness. Whenever I first entered college, I didn't know much about it, but I learned very quickly. And we're actually the presidents for our campus's health and wellness club. And so we know the ins and outs of the landscape on how students can maintain their physical and mental, like their overall well-being on campus. And one of the biggest gaps we saw was eating well, was diet. That seems to be something that is really difficult for students. If they don't like the dining hall food, their option is the convenience store on campus, and that's not filled with a lot of convenient, healthy snacks. And so a lot of healthy snacks aren't convenient. So we thought, well, let's start there. And we started working on that. But then I lost a family member to mental health, and I realized how important it was. And I also really saw how it's not something that healthy snacks address. And so we're both very passionate about overall well-being. And so whenever we're looking at healthy snacks and we're thinking about what makes us healthy as individuals, we don't think exclusively about physical health, whereas it seems like the snack industry up to this point has been thinking exclusively about physical health. So we're really starting that conversation around mental health and bringing that to our product through the research that we're doing on the ingredients we can include to really support people both in college, because we've seen that there's a lot of overlap between those who are really busy and stressed. And so that's something that our snack is really able to find. We saw that they really do go hand in hand. And so it's just been this, we started one place. It's like the first thing that stuck to the wall wasn't even exactly on our target. And we kind of had to, I guess, like move it closer over the course of the Break Fast and Launch, and the Trinity Stumberg Accelerator really helped us look into what our passions are, our motivations. And so really looking into our motivations helped us find where we need to be and how we can best help people through our food service.
I dig it. So thank you both for sharing your stories. I want to kind of bring in something that, I think both of y'all are talking about, is this idea of student entrepreneurship. But, one of the things that I think is really important is this idea that entrepreneurship is sort of open to everybody, and everybody has different paths to get there. Y'all just happen to figure some of that out while going through college as well. But I mean, did y'all have examples of entrepreneurship? Are y'all majored in entrepreneurship? Like, what exactly said, hey, I'm going to be an entrepreneur? Like, that sounds like a thing that people do these days. Like, and then, on the flip side, I think that there's so much excitement for maybe like the more intangible types of entrepreneurship, like tech can sometimes be a bit intangible. How did y'all not choose to go down that route? Or was it just never even a thought, really? So whoever would like to go first, it's up to you.
We can go. I think maybe this isn't informative, but I've known since I was very young that I wanted to create something that's going to last and that's going to make a difference. And the the best way to do that is to build a team and make a good product that solves real problems for real people. And I mean, that was my guiding star. It was just a really clear thing to be in the entrepreneurship program at Trinity.
And my journey started a little bit later. I was trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. I entered college and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I thought that I would like to learn about business, but I didn't know what area I wanted to start. And I've always been someone who's a little more on the jack of all trades side of things. I don't like to specialize or like limit myself to one thing. I want to do everything. And so I thought entrepreneurship would be a really good way to learn all about business. And then I was able to see and discover how creative you can be with it and how it really does have an impact. It is something that when you wake up in the morning, you're going to care about it because it's what you've chosen to do. And that's something that I think really resonates with a lot of people, is that they want to be proud of what they're doing. They want to care about what they're doing every day when they wake up, and what they're going to do that day. And so, yeah, it kind of started with, I'm interested in everything. And I see that entrepreneurship really allows you to explore. You kind of have to put on different hats. Like you have to know a little bit about everything going on around you when you're starting a business.
So you asked why not tech, right? I don't know if this is Kenan and Amy's story. I doubt it, but for me, I didn't do tech because I just frankly wasn't smart enough to do it. And I don't know, maybe we would have been in a different position today. But I think for me, I realized that I didn't know that I wanted to be in this industry per se, right? But I knew that I wanted to be in the entrepreneurship space in some aspect. I started out in college wanting to be in some facet of business, kind of got roped into the accounting field, and realized that being an accountant wasn't really what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And there are plenty smarter people to do that. But I wanted to be in that space somehow. And then taking that first entrepreneurship course, I realized like, wow, you can be in the business field and actually do something you want to do, which for me, I began to realize was be in the food industry and understand how we can affect quality of the industry by being so young, right? I think in y'all's generation, food was not, the quality was not there. The focus on quality was not there. It was more on convenience. How do we make it as easy as possible for people? But for our generation, and I think Amy and Kenan would say the same, it's more focused on what we're putting into our bodies, whether that be health ingredients or just taste good ingredients, right? That being higher quality. So I realized that was my passion, and if I could make money doing that, that would be where I would go.
Perfect. So you'll both go to college, or both groups go to college, right? And you learn a lot, and still are learning about entrepreneurship. And I went once upon a time, I went to school, right? And I think I learned a few things, but there's also that just being in the field and actually selling to somebody and talking to somebody you have no idea who they are. I mean, what did you learn in college, or what have you learned so far in college that you're just like, yeah, when I've done that in the real world, that just didn't really play out? Or has it kind of fallen into the track of, what you have learned has been, everything has been extremely dispensable back into your company? Because I think that's something that maybe some people feel the barrier to entry is like, well, maybe I should go to school to do this, or maybe that adds a lot of aspects to it, but also sometimes when we get down in the real world, it's somewhat of a different story. So I'd love to know where do those splits happen for y'all?
I'll start. So for me, I'm a strong advocate for knowing your strengths. If you know that this is what you want to do, and you have the grit to sell your product, make your product, do everything yourself, I would say go do that, right? I don't know having a college degree is necessary to starting a successful business. I mean, I know many people in the food industry who did not go to university or even community college, and are doing very, very well, right? Because I think it's different for other industries. For food, at least, I mean, you're working with physical goods. If you have a palate, if you have an understanding of the industry, and a small business acumen, I think you can do quite well. And the sales side of things is really just an art in itself. You're not going to learn that in school. You may take a class or two on it, but I mean, in that sense, it's just practice, practice, practice. However, I will say, if you don't know that you're an entrepreneur, you don't know you want to be in this industry, if you have the opportunity, go to school. Because it provides this opportunity to learn a lot about a lot of different things and learn about yourself mostly, and what your strengths are, where you can fit in, and find your career, right? Because if you're not cut out for entrepreneurship and you just head into it without a fallback plan, I guess, it can get pretty rough. And to have a fallback it just makes every day a little bit easier, because you can get through. And obviously there's some qualms with that as well. If you have a fallback, it allows you to rest on your laurels a little bit. You may not work as hard, but I think having that opportunity, especially, I mean, now we see these things happen with a virus that stops everything, right? If you were full on into the industry, and didn't have another plan, right? You'd be making some pretty quick decisions that who knows how they turn out, right?
Yeah, I would definitely echo everything Jacob said. Most businesses are started by people in their 40s, 50s, whatever, who have experience in the industry. And if you're starting a business as a student or just out of school, you need to realize you're at a disadvantage and that you are going to go out and fail a lot until you figure it out, because there's so much in school that you don't learn. I think it's absolutely a great opportunity, just like Jacob said, for a whole host of reasons. But also, you can't expect yourself to know everything diving into a business that you're starting. If you go into it with the growth mindset, being open to learning from failure, I would say that's kind of the biggest thing that they don't necessarily stress in school.
And I would also add that in my entrepreneurship classes, I got a lot of help on what to look out for in the big picture, some things that weren't even on my radar, some understandings of starting points, but beyond that, how to do the things is going to really be that whole process of trial and error. And school isn't the only place that you can get that information. There's a lot of resources online. We have the internet, because at the end of the day, you don't need a certificate saying you graduated from, this so-and-so school to be an entrepreneur. You're hiring yourself. What you need more than anything is the ability to kind of educate yourself on the different things that you'll be doing, because I haven't taken a lot of sales classes, but I'm finding myself in a position where I have to know how to sell to different people. And so a lot of entrepreneurship, and that's one thing I really like about entrepreneurship, is that it really lets you take charge of your own learning. And so sometimes education and learning aren't the same. Education is passing a class, where learning means that you're going to be able to understand something and apply it. And so learning is definitely through that trial and error process that Cannon mentioned, failing a few times and finally figuring out where you can land before you move forward and fail a few more times.
I really love that idea. Both of y'all have talked about sales, and I mentioned it at the beginning. Once you're in front of somebody that's not your friend or family, and you have to convince them that what you have is worth value, it kind of throws out a lot of stuff that you might feel like you knew at the beginning. And it's also a true test of whether you have something that's real or not. So I'd really love to know from both of y'all, what did y'all learn? How have y'all learned? What have y'all learned about the selling process? And then also, you know, I think part of that goes back to, did you have the right product initially, or did you have the right packaging initially? You know, just what did you learn from actually getting out there and selling?
For me, selling successfully is all about listening, because you start somewhere and it's not going to work. But if you try different messaging, you see who it sticks with, and then you track it. You give data points basically on who's responding to what improvements you need to make. And then, but beyond that, it's just talking to people. If they just bought your thing, it's a, hey, you know, it's especially great if you're a student, because you can say, hey, this is a student startup, we're trying to learn this. Why did you just buy? Or if someone's walking away, they just had a sample, it's like, hey, why didn't you buy? And then you just take all of that information and distill it into a sales strategy that's going to work for your target market. And you know it's going to work because you talk to your target market.
And entrepreneurship really is kind of an overlap of science and art. It's really amazing how it really has to incorporate too. It's the science of creating basically an experiment, and you have the hypothesis that people want this. And then you go and you test it out, you perform your experiment. And then when you're doing that, you get the data points, you get the observations that can then inform your next experiment. Okay, well, they actually want something more like this. And then as you go and reiterate that process, you get closer and closer to discovering what you need to do, what you want to do. And selling is definitely finding out and really pinpointing what people are looking for. And listening, like Cannon mentioned, it's all about listening. That's actually how we named our business, was listening to what people said about our initial product, and just kind of taking that and creating messaging that really resonates with the people that we think will find an interest in and value our product. And so it's knowing who you are, knowing who your audience is, who you're trying to help, and then listening to them and finding a way to resonate with them, that you can tell them what you want them to hear, but they're going to interpret it in their own way. And then you can take that feedback and then kind of see, okay, did I hear you correctly? And then through that process, I think that that's really helpful for sales, to really be open-minded to getting that responsive feedback through your science experiment of what you think they're looking for.
And if I can just add another question to that for you two. So you mentioned, you know, coming up with the name of your company based on that feedback. What name or names did y'all have before, and why did they not resonate?
Do we want to start from the very beginning?
Yeah, I think it's okay. From the very beginning.
we originally started out as dough, trying to make, well, it was, Cannon was really passionate about finding a healthy donut. And then we decided, let's change it to waffle, because that would be a production process that we thought would be really interesting. And so we went there, but then that's when we shifted from just a healthy snack to a healthy snack that's really taking health to a new meaning, incorporating mental health. And so then we became Revive. We found out there is another company in the food space called Revive, so we needed to change our name again. And at that point, we were going out. We already had like a Revive sign, and we were handing out samples and listening to what people said. And what really like struck out to like what came out to us and what we heard was, over and over again, when we said, do you want a sample, they would ask us a question. And, you know, the hesitation was because, and as they said, they would say over and over again, I'm very thoughtful about what I put into my body. I'm very careful about what I put into my body, very mindful about what I put into my body. And that's how we feel too about what we eat as college students going to the convenience store. we're careful, we're thoughtful, we're mindful about what we put into our bodies. And so we really took that feedback and we kind of thought about how we can incorporate that into our branding, into our message, into our mission. And we ended up with the name Thoughtfull. And it's kind of, thoughtful with 2 L's, so full indicating the food, but then the thought because of the mental health aspect of it.
Awesome. And Jacob, so on your end, what have you learned in actually selling to people? What maybe misconceptions or preconceived notions did you find out were not right, or maybe you found out some of them were right?
I think the biggest thing is a lot of people think sales is just a lot of action, that being going out and physically selling as much as possible. But I realized that it also takes a lot of assumption as well. So before you go out and make a sale, you have to have some assumption of why the person you're trying to sell to needs your thing, right? If you have no assumption and you're just trying to sell to them, then they may be the totally wrong person, right? And you would have figured that out had you made some assumptions before. Now, that doesn't mean that in the action you can't learn something about your assumption. So this is something that Cannon and Amy were talking about with the feedback from customers. So let's say you have an assumption that person A is your customer, and you try to sell to them and they say, no, I don't want your thing. Okay, that was the action. Now you need to understand the feedback and then adjust your assumption on why that person didn't like your thing, or maybe they're not your customer at all. And then you need to go make another set of assumptions about another person B, right? And continue this process. So it's more of a system of creating a plan, going and executing on that plan. And then if it fails, which would be a no sale, saying, okay, how do we adjust? And then alternatively, if it works, then replicating that to see if it's actually a true thing or if it was just kind of this one-off fluke. Because that happens in sales too. I mean, you can create a plan, have an ideal customer, sell to that one person, and then do it again to another person that looks just like them, or organization. They're interchangeable. And then it doesn't work, and you kind of scratch your head and say, wait a second, I thought I had this sales thing down. No, nobody does. If somebody does and you know them, send them my way, because we need help with that. But I think with sales, it's just, and at the end of the day, right, you're going to get a lot of no's, and it's becoming okay with sort of failing in a sense. And it was interesting starting it as a college student, right? Having this culture of let's get the best grades we can, let's do our best. And at least for me, I'm not sure about Ken and Amy, failure wasn't really like an option in a sense. So when you go and somebody tells you no, like, I'm not going to buy your stuff, that's like getting a 60 on a test, right? That's like failing. So it's just like, how do you become comfortable with something that you haven't really understood? Because in school, at least, it's like you need to be comfortable with failure.
Awesome. I see you guys over there shaking your heads. So is there anything you want to add to that?
I would definitely say being comfortable with the people who say no. Not everyone is your target market. I'm trying to think, one of the days that we were out, we had some gentleman come by who was like, we knew he was maybe not going to be a target market, but we're like, okay, let's still explore this a little bit. And he kind of walked up and he said, too healthy. And then he walked away. And I mean, in school, kind of with the school mindset, that's a 60. Okay, we got to know, oh no. But I guess from an entrepreneur's perspective, that's good feedback. There's going to be people who are not looking for a healthy snack. We were outside of Central Market, so we were a little confused, but in that sense, understanding that not everyone is going to be a yes, and really finding and clarifying who we are and who we are selling to, and being open-minded to that might change, that might not be who we think it is originally. And definitely like going out to the farmers markets and hearing no several times, like that's just going to happen, and being comfortable with that, since it's not failure. We do kind of take it as an opportunity to learn more about ourselves and what we're doing.
It's all data.
Okay, so real quick, because I'm old, did you just say they're not going to be all AS? Is that a thing that you said, or did I just mishear you? You said that not all of them are going to be. I thought I heard AS, and I was like, what does that mean? Like as simple,
Oh
as
no,
straightforward?
that's not a fancy acronym.
Okay,
Yeah, they won't all be our target market. Or maybe I
sorry,
said our clients.
I'm old, so I just okay. Let's keep going. So you've said target market. Both of y'all have said target market a bunch, and I feel like that's something that I don't even. I mean, a lot of people don't get, like, what does that mean? Like, my target market is anybody with cash, right? Isn't that my target market? Or like, I'm trying to target children. Like, isn't that my target market? I know some people that are as codified as saying my target market is the 30-year-old yoga person living in Castle Hills, right? Like that seems a lot more defined. But then what happens if your product goes outside of that? Like, is that still the market? Like, so I mean, Jacob, for example, I want to say that you started off thinking like, well, my main market, my main target is college students. But then now I believe you're also selling in Central Market. I mean, yeah, there's a college right next door, but I don't know if that's translating or not. And then for you guys, if college kids are the potential market, from the Thoughtfull team, then what, like, if I graduate, is it like I'm no longer cool enough to eat Thoughtfull? Like, I'd love to just kind of get some more insights on that, and maybe we can start with you, Jacob.
Yeah, so on target market, I think that's a very fluid term, and it can change a lot over the course of your business, just like ours did. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. So we started off thinking that we were the coffee for college students, being that it was high quality and quick. But over time, what we realized was the majority of college students didn't really understand the quality aspect of it, right? Like selling a $4 bottle of coffee to somebody who drinks a 99-cent beer, it's a little bit tough. So what we realized was, okay, how do we sell a $4 bottle of coffee to somebody who buys like a $3 bottle of beer? And we always translate ours to the craft brewing industry, because we're in beverage, and also coffee is kind of lending itself to this space where quality is becoming a concern, and mass production is sort of frowned upon, although accepted as a movement of coffee and beer alike forward over other beverages. But I think it's all dependent on where you are in the growth of your company. When you start out, you're going to want to, your market and your target needs to be somebody that's close to you, somebody that you understand. For both us and Thoughtfull, that would be college students. We understood that market because we were in it. And I think that helps a lot when you're starting out, if you actually get it, because if not, then you alternatively need a bunch of research and experience to understand other targets. And that's why, I mean, you mentioned Central Market for us. We just got into Central Market this year. And we really didn't know what our target was going to look like right when we got into Central Market. So, I mean, we thought we would capture some of the college students from UIW and Trinity going to Central Market. But we also understood that 90% of the customer base of Central Market HEB was a higher income millennial who was in their 25 to 35-year-old range, and not an 18 to 22-year-old, right? So how did we shift that and understand, okay, we're in a totally different marketplace, although we still can sell on a college campus because we have our niche fans there. How do we start creating niche fans in other markets as we grow? So looking at, for us, it was looking at, okay, we have a new style of customer, that being outside of food service or outside of a farmer's market like Thoughtfull. What is the customer target within that, that new avenue of sales? As opposed to saying, okay, our target market is X, no matter where we sell at. Because for example, you can't, if we were to move into an even different marketplace like Costco or something, you can't assume that the millennial, higher income, very few kids, if at all, right, working in tech is also shopping at Costco, or alternatively, right? So if we were to get into that different space, okay, what is a millennial that has since developed a family that goes to Costco now to shop instead of Central Market because they need to feed more people? So they still want their high quality products. How do we provide that in a different format, and understand that that target is still there, just maybe in a different way?
And I would also add that the idea of a target market isn't limiting you to one group of people. It's just really finding who is going to resonate and understand the value that you're creating through your profit, who's going to understand that a single origin batch is a high quality of coffee, who's going to understand that mental health is an important part of their overall well-being, and that they should be thoughtful about what they put into their bodies. And there's going to be people who understand that who aren't college students. There's going to be people, you know, maybe at a healthy coffee shop who are working hard and that understand, you know, that they are stressed and that they need to take care of themselves, because if they're already in that space, you know, of course, there's the idea of the brand alignment and the persona that you're creating, not as limiting you to a category, to a demographic, but more so to the quality of what the person believes in and what the person looks for when they're wanting to go out and buy something. So kind of looking into the choices that they make and understanding that if someone is not already in a space where they're looking for that, if they tell you no, that's not necessarily reflective of a failure on your part, because you're still offering the same value, but more so maybe a disconnect between the values that you believe in, the values that they believe in, and like what they're looking for. Because overall, like your target market, it can be college students and young professionals and XYZ, but starting one place and then kind of having more of, I guess, instead of like a box, more of a bullseye, where you're aiming for something, but there's going to be a lot of area around that. And then that's going to change based off of where your initial target is, if it is at Central Market, if it's in different retail locations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just real quick, the idea of a target market, at least in my opinion, the age, the geography, those details are important. But I think the most important thing is exactly what Amy is talking about. It's how they think. It's what pain points they're experiencing in their life. It's what they value. It's even what other products they buy. The more you know about how they make purchasing decisions, the better.
And I think like if you go out and you've researched target markets, you're going to hear a lot about like the demographics. I think that is really about the communication of explaining the group of people that you think have those values, but that's not necessarily all of what you're looking for in who you're reaching out to with your product.
Awesome. Yeah, that's I think both of those you know, elaborations are really helpful for sure. So in terms of like the trajectory of this, you know, I think kind of keeping on to some degree part of that. I mean, when did you realize for you this was real? Like this was something that y'all were really going to chase down? Like this is, I mean, Jacob, you're still doing it, you know, like, so, I mean, it's real. How did that come to your mind? Like, you know what, I'm going to keep running down this road. Like that's, I think especially when you're in college and you have so many other things that you could potentially do. You know, why do you continue to chase it?
I think I don't know if it really ever feels real. I know that's sort of cliche to say, but I mean, even though we're on a grocery store shelf, when we walk through Central Market to pick up something, it's just like, this doesn't, it feels surreal. Like, we don't understand how we got here, what we did right. Really, we just got lucky, I guess, and worked really hard to get that luck. But I think it starts to feel a little bit more like, okay, I'm settled. Once you realize that you're too far in. And I don't say that in a negative way. I say that like, okay, I have people rooting for me now, whether that being purchasing customers or just like your family and friends. And then like you purchase your first piece of equipment and it's like, okay, like, oh, we have a bank account now and things like that. And you just start to realize like, okay, I mean, I have this opportunity here. Should I just treat it like a project, or is this legitimate thing? And I think for us, the environment of Trinity helped us realize that it was a little more real because of this program called Stumberg, which is this venture competition similar to the one Launch SA provides through Breakfast and Launch. But understanding that you have this opportunity to pitch for funding and create this profitable business, I say profitable, growing business, so that you can kind of solidify yourself as an entrepreneur. And then with that title, say, okay, how do I continue this? And how do I keep giving it my all for the people that support me?
I think it becomes real when you decide it's real. When you commit to putting in years of your life to making it happen, then it's real. I mean, it's going to be real. It's real for you. I mean, for me, I love food. I think there's a beauty in handling food and actually touching it and making something that other people put into their bodies. It's this kind of almost sacred interaction that's been, you know, it's a cornerstone of existence as an organism. It's how we feed. And to be involved at that level where you're making something that you give to others, there's something special about it. And for me, that experiencing that made me realize I was going to be committed. And after that, I mean, it's come what may, you're in it. You're in it for the long run.
I would also agree with both Cannon and Jacob. Maybe that there's not a definite this is real stage, but kind of a continuum of it's feeling more and more and more real. It's not binary, it's more of a gradient. I'd say that it started to feel a lot more real whenever I realized that how I view myself and how I view my values was really tightly connected with what I was working on. Where the branding that we decided for our business, that the value of our business really like fundamentally matched the value of us as people, to where we're kind of very connected to our business personally. And then I'd say definitely the first few sales that we had, again, was another next step in the gradient of feeling more and more real. You know, selling to like strangers, especially because thinking from their perspective, okay, they're going, and to them, we're just a business. And kind of seeing ourselves in their eyes, seeing ourselves in our own eyes of how we view ourselves as very tightly connected to our business's brand, and seeing ourselves as, yes, we are one of the food vendors in this place. And to this person, they don't know exactly, you know, all of our story. They don't know, you know, always, they can kind of tell we're students, but they don't know what that's like, you know, from our perspective. But to kind of see Entrepreneurship definitely opened my eyes to every single item that I see in a grocery store. I see a lot differently because I see the ideas behind it as opposed to just the snack itself. And so that's really interesting, or like the food item itself. So I think it's interesting how all of the brands, all of the items you see at a grocery store are people like us, the people who started and whose brands align with who they are, and that they've worked to create that on the shelf.
Perfect. So you mentioned, I like this part. This is like the fun part for me. Like once you actually dig into an industry, now all of a sudden you start looking at every other product, and it probably also makes it impossible to eat or drink something else when you're like, I know what that is, I'm not going to eat it. Like that red dye number 5, like I don't put that in my stuff because I know now. Like so I'd love to know, like how has being in the food industry changed your own consumer habits, if at all?
I think for us, it's made us eat a lot better in terms of like the quality and taste, and understanding that although something's more expensive, it can provide significantly more value. Whereas buying like 6 loaves of Wonder Bread, which is delicious, although that may be cheaper than buying like 1 loaf of something baked in house at Central Market, I think that the understanding of value is something that younger consumers have learned, and that a lot of consumers can learn, in the sense that if you have the opportunity financially to have that understanding, it's very beneficial, because I think we go through life thinking like, okay, well, like meals are not a priority, food is not a priority, it's just kind of a means to an end of me getting through the day to make money, right? But I think that it can be an end in a sense that you can sit down, you can have a meal, or you can have a snack that actually benefits your body and benefits your mind in the sense that you enjoy it. So I think that's the biggest thing we've learned is understand that buying locally grown or higher quality food products is more than just spending a little bit more money for better taste. It's like, okay, if I'm buying this, what value does it provide me outside of kind of just sustenance? Because at the end of the day, although food is sustenance, I think we need to think about it a little bit differently.
And I'd say before we started entering this entrepreneurial space, when I saw a product, it was just the product. That's just what I saw. It was what it was. But now that I've entered this, and now that I have, that we have our own product out there, I don't see products just as, a thing of salsa. I see, why did they do that? Why is the labeling, why have they decided to do this? Is more what I see whenever I go down the aisle to look at these food items. And so it really has changed the way that I choose what I'm eating, because I understand that there's intentionality behind the products that we choose. And especially in America's society, a lot of the idea of buying who you see yourself to be, you buy this because you care about this. You buy this because you think that, this is something that aligns with your identity. And so that overlap of what the product is trying to convey as what that represents, and then what I, as the consumer, am, trying to say about myself by buying that product.
Yeah, well said. You vote with your money. Buy things that you support.
Awesome. I love that. So let's see. Before I open it up to potential questions in the chat, it looks like let me see if there are questions in the chat here. Looks like there's at least one. So before I get to that question, I just want to ask one or two more questions on my end. And so, as you think about the continuation of this journey that you've made, let's say that, I mean, it could go really well, or it could go, miserably, depending, right? Is this, I guess, where do you want it to go? Like, what would your big vision goal be to see this in, X amount of time? And, what do you feel like your next steps are to really take it there?
I'll start. So I think for us, we didn't realize our vision until about a year ago. We've been in business now for almost 3 years. So it took us a while to get out of working on the business and like understanding that we were in the very niche coffee industry, to understand what our big picture was. But I think at the end of the day, what we want to do is to help people understand the value of great food, like I was talking about earlier, and understanding how they can shift their lifestyle to understand that value. I think in the US, we have a bit of an issue with that. If you were in Europe or something, I think they have a better understanding of the value of food. So for us, it's how do we get more people to eat better? And is that sort of on a timeline? I don't think so. I think it'll take quite a while. If we had to put a number on it, maybe 10 years, right? But I think that bringing it to a more focused sense, it's how do we go into work each day and understand, or how do we go into work each day and make the world understand food better? So the little processes that we take, right? Like capping bottles by hand or something that's a little bit more craft oriented. How do we do that each and every day so that we can promote better food for more people?
And our mission is to change how people view healthy snacks. We want to change the culture in America to make people see that you have a choice to fuel your body and your mind with what you eat, and that we can make a snack that helps people see that.
And creating a product is really integrating an idea into a person's life. And so ultimately with our product, we're hoping to change the person's, I guess, lifestyle a little bit, their day in, day out. What are they doing? How are they sustaining themselves throughout the day? But also just creating a culture and a brand and a movement around what we believe in as a business. And so that the people who are buying our product, or that who are being, exposed to our product and seeing it, that, they'll look into, okay, what is that about? And then, kind of as Cannon mentioned, reaching that goal with, each and every time that someone chooses to buy our snack, that they aren't just getting a food item, but they're getting more out of how they view food, how they view themselves, and how they view the world around them.
Yeah, and as far as like the overarching timeline, we want it everywhere, and we will work for as long as it takes to make that happen.
and I mean, we're also like in our, early stage of entrepreneurship. So, I mean, I'm sure if you come back to us, 3 years from now, our answer might be closer to Jacob's. Our answer might be completely different. And I think that that's okay. I think it's good to have an idea of what you're looking for, of what you're striving for, and move as far as you can in that direction. And then if something says, okay, you need to go a different direction, like be open-minded to following and kind of going with the flow, to reach, ultimately where you will need to be.
I think that's it's incredible that both of y'all have decided to take this sort of movement purview rather than specifically just a hey, you and you kind of did talk a little bit about being in every store, which I think is great, but overall it's about pursuing an ideological shift, which I think is extremely admirable. And like at the end of the day, I think that might be something that's more resonant to stay focused on the goal than to just pursue, hey, I hope to have $1 billion in my bank account one day. I mean, that might be cool, but also it's not necessarily something that might get you up every day with a smile. So let's see. Final question on my end. So talking about your growth, I know that you mentioned Stumberg, you mentioned Break Fast and Launch, but really I want to know, aside, what resources have you taken, learned from, maybe mentors, words of advice, wisdom, otherwise, that, have really meant something to you? And if you were to explain to maybe one of your peers or, another student group going down the road, or even somebody that's just looking to start a business, like, what do you think are the, 1, 2 most important things that they can walk away with and say, okay, like, I don't know everything, but I think I kind of know where to go?
I would say just operating from that standpoint of you don't know, that's the most important thing. And I think what we've learned is that a conversation with someone who is actually in your space and has real experience and can give you actionable advice is worth so much more than your own research, your own just struggling to figure it out. You can make so much more focused progress by just reaching out. And as students, especially, we have the superpower where we say, hi, I'm a student from Trinity University. I'm working on this thing for my entrepreneurship class. I'd love to meet with you to talk about XYZ. If you have a heart, you say, yeah, it was a fun time. I mean, if they don't, not saying I don't have a heart, that's really, really rude. But it's just being open and talking to the right people, for sure.
And I would also give a shout out to Jacob and Selena of QuickSip, because they have actually helped us a lot as mentors. And so, kind of as Cannon mentioned, reach out to a lot of people that you've heard of, that you're interested in, and get their take on whatever you like about their business. Ask them about that. And that, it's easier said than done. And so a lot of it is kind of forcing you out of your own comfort zone. If you're not used to cold emailing people, if you're not used to really going out on a limb like that, just kind of understanding that a lot of entrepreneurship is taking a little bit of a risk, and it's being comfortable with the worst they can say is no. The best that they can say is yes, and you can learn a lot from them. And I would definitely say surrounding yourself with mentors and with resources, joining programs like Break Fast and Launch, and getting those connections. Being part of Trinity's entrepreneurship program, and understanding that we have an entire network of people who want to support us, and that we can fall back on to ask questions on the things that we don't know about. And so I would definitely say that a lot of business, a lot of entrepreneurship is, of course, people, and really leveraging that and learning through people, because you can look things up online. You can go through, lots of books and try to figure out, okay, what is the answer to my question? But it's not always going to be written out, because if you are starting a business, if it's a startup, it's not something that's already in existence. It's something that you're creating. You're a pioneer. You're on the frontier of whatever you're developing. And so definitely just being comfortable with being the first one to reach out into that area.
Yeah, thank you, Jacob, and thank you, Selena, because you want to find people like Jacob and Selena. You want to find people who are genuinely interested in you and seeing you succeed, and then you have this amazing relationship. And it's just so much more than the advice. It's about learning how to run a business and how to live differently, and then you pass that on to other people, and you help your mentors out, and it's this great synergistic, it's this network really of people who are all united around a common cause, and that's really powerful. That's what propels businesses forward.
And even Jacob mentioned like being in too far, kind of in a sense that a lot of people are rooting for you. That's a good thing, because you understand that there's a network of people around you that are expecting you to do well. that are believing in you that you will do well. And so that kind of is a really good reminder, if you are doubting yourself, if you're going through a rough patch, that, you know, you're not in it alone whenever you surround yourself with these people who care.
Yeah, I would I mean, agree with that wholly, in the sense that mentorship is the key to entrepreneurship, especially in the food business, because there are a lot of different aspects of food, whether it be manufacturing, licensing, regulations, things like that, that nobody really tells you, and Google won't tell you either. I think a lot of people sort of resort to that and say like, oh, everything's on the internet. And it's like, sure, that's true. But like Kenan was saying, having people in your industry that understand the path, as opposed to you like going to class, whether that be at a university or a class on Google or a class on YouTube, to get an answer and then go execute and fail multiple times. That mentor can tell you how they executed and failed multiple times already, so you don't have to do that. And I think the idea of mentorship and having advisors is to have sort of this tier system of mentors. So having people that are at your stage, doing the same thing you're doing, trying to get into the same levels of business or the same revenue goals or something like that. And then having somebody who's maybe 5 to 10 years ahead of you in terms of that same industry. And let's say they're in more grocery stores across the country, or they're nationally distributed and you're regionally distributed. And then have somebody that's like 20 to 30 years ahead of you, right? Like maybe they've worked for a Fortune 500 company, or they own a business that's globally distributed, or has exited to Nestle or something like that, if we're talking about the food industry. And I think for us, the way that looks in a more focused sense is, okay, me or QuickSip and Thoughtfull are generally in the same realm of business, right? We're both student startups that are in the first 5 years, and revenue growth is around the same, right? We have the same opportunities. So I think us sticking together, it's sort of this first level of mentorship between each other, is where we're at. And then the second level is us talking to all the food companies that have since graduated from Break Fast and Launch, and gone through the Quest for Texas Best program for HEB, and gotten into HEBs and Whole Foods. And now us as QuickSip are shifting into that gear, as we just got into Central Market. So now we're having more conversations with people who are in that 5 to 10 years ahead of us, right? Trying to figure out how to go from regional distribution to national distribution, as we're trying to go from local to regional. And then also one of the services that we're afforded at Trinity, which I don't know if other places are, or have similar opportunities, but we have this thing called Venture Mentor Service, which is where people who are in our industries are a little bit outside, but are much further along, that 10 to 20 to 30 years ahead of us, are mentors to us. So our sort of mentor board that we have, I mean, we have people from Kraft Foods, people who teach at the Kellogg School of Business, people who are entrepreneurs, very successful entrepreneurs in San Antonio, although from a different industry. I think having those people who may not necessarily be the person in HEB grinding it out that's 5 to 10 years ahead of you, but the person that's been in that executive role at a very, very large company, or in a very large arena, right? Having that perspective as well, saying, okay, if our vision is to do X, which is provide food for more people, like how do we do that? Obviously getting to that Nestle, Coca-Cola level is the way to do that, to really get your vision to its fruition. So you have to have that knowledge, because if you don't have that knowledge from real people who have been in that size of business, then you're not going to know how to get to the final frontier. In which case, every day is going to be a lot harder if you don't know how to get there.
Thank you both. So I'm going to move towards the chat, and if you happen to have questions, anybody that's in the audience here, feel free to drop them either in the chat or you can unmute yourself and ask. But I'm going to go ahead and start with the questions from Hector Morales. And it looks like there's two separate questions here, so I'm going to ask them one at a time. How did you all deal with family or friends being negative about becoming an entrepreneur? So, a lot of times they can ask, hey, that seems risky. I know with my mom, it was like, hey, you should probably be an accountant. And I was like, yeah, I can do that, but I don't want to. So.
Yeah, I'll start with the first question. I think knowing Ken and Amy, I think both their parents are in the entrepreneur realm. So they had a little bit different experience, but for me, my parents had grown up in very financially conservative households where stability was kind of the goal. And the minute I told them like I'm going to college to be an entrepreneur, they're like, that is ridiculous. You're getting a degree, you should go use that, right? And I think that obviously I use that every day in very different ways, and they appreciate my entrepreneurial journey a lot more now than they did when I was 18, telling them that I was going to make a $1 million business, right, out of copy, which was idealistic. But I think understanding that the negativity comes in the sense that they want you to be secure in your happiness. And I think that communicating what happiness is to you is the key to having them have a different outlook on what you're doing. Because they think that sort of stability or being able to do other things outside of your work will make you happy. Whereas if you communicated to them that, no, I want my work to make me happy, and in order to do that, I need to be an entrepreneur, I think they'd have a lot more respect for it and understanding for it. Because at the end of the day, they want you to be happy. And I think if they don't want you to be happy, you need to audit your circle, right? And say, maybe I shouldn't hang out with this person so much anymore. It's a little bit more difficult when it's a family member. But obviously, like having those tough conversations of, okay, what do you want for my life? Like if it is just to be financially stable so that I can do things that you think are fun for me, I think having a conversation and saying that's not your life is important and allows you to deal with that negativity a lot better.
Go for it.
Okay, I'll start. So I would say that especially maybe more from the perspective of a student startup, a lot of times it feels like people view what we're doing as a project, or like, oh, that's really cool that they're working on something, but less in a serious sense. So like, this is the business we're working on, and more as this is a cool college project. And so I'd say that that's probably a little bit different experience just from a student entrepreneur, student startup perspective. But also I have, I guess, sort of a odd background as far as like my family's involvement in what I'm doing and what I'm choosing to do. And so I would even take that, like, I definitely agree with everything that Jacob said. The people who might be questioning and might be checking in, is this really what you want to do? Like, this might not work. And telling you that a lot of times, as long as they have your best interest in hearts, because they want to be certain that you will have, that you'll find happiness in a secure way. But I'd say even for myself, like I definitely find myself asking myself that same thing, like, am I going to be able to find happiness in a secure way? And a lot of times when you're choosing what you want to do, it's not choosing what you want to have as your outcome, but which journey you would rather enjoy taking. Would you rather enjoy taking the journey and going through the struggles of being in a job that you might not necessarily care about, or are you going to enjoy the struggles involved with entrepreneurship on taking risks and failing, but doing something that you care about? And so really it comes down to what your day in and day out looks like, because you're not necessarily choosing the end of either path, the end of entrepreneurship versus, working for a different business. You're choosing what path of struggles, what path of difficulties that you will find the most fulfillment in overcoming and working through every day.
Yeah, I have nothing to add.
Okay.
I have
So
a little
moving
bit more
to,
on.
oh, you want to add? Okay.
Sorry about that. I think also understanding that regret is a thing, and getting to the obviously we're us three are very young, but getting to the end of life and saying, man, I really wish I would have continued with that. I think living with that regret is pretty hard. So understanding that that's a real thing, and you should act on your passions, just so at the end of this stage, right? Saying, okay, did I do everything I wanted to? I think that's important, regardless of whatever anybody thinks.
Awesome. So moving to the next question that I see here, how did you all find your basic market research, for example, demographics? As in, did your entrepreneur classes teach you or provide you with specific data sets, or did you have to come up with that information on your own?
I think the classes provided in sort of a framework on how to do research, but not necessarily told us the resources. I mean, at the end of the day, Google does work. It's not as good as mentors for market research, but it does work. And I think most of it is just, again, like the sales piece, having some assumption of what your market is, or what you think will work in the marketplace, and then going and testing that. And like Thoughtfull had the experience of, they started as Dough, which was a donut company, and now they're Thoughtfull, which is a mental health snack. Very different arenas, very different products, and they've shifted a lot through that. So I think going out, having these assumptions that you have this product that could fit this market, going and testing it, and if it doesn't work, then let's shift the model, shift the product, something like that. If you're talking about just, okay, what does the coffee market look like? What's the size of it? Which places are the hottest for it? Or if you're looking at mental health snacks, like, is California better for mental health snacks than San Antonio? I don't know that answer, but in that sort of sterile sense, Google will always have the answer for that. But yeah.
Yeah, well said. Market research can be really broad. It can be, going through these databases and reading reports on Statista, or it can be putting an ad in Google AdWords and seeing what kind of traction. It could be throwing up a landing page for your website, doing some basic advertising. It could be just talking to people, making a kind of minimum viable product, like the most basic version of what you want to produce, and then just giving it to people and seeing how they react. So test, keep testing, validate your assumptions.
And I would say that definitely market research isn't just one discipline in and of itself. It really is a conglomeration of disciplines. It has data science, looking through the statistics, how big is your market size, how big is your potential market. You have the objective numbers, what percentage of people care in what you think, of your demographic, what percentage of people care about that, how much do they spend on your item. There's the data side, and then there's also the anthropological, psychological side of what do people care about, what motivates someone to buy something, what does their day in and day out look like, what are their pain points, what are they currently doing to solve those problems. And so in our classes, they gave us access, to Statista, and they told us to Google things. Definitely Google is available for everyone. And then they also gave us some advice on, what questions to really be looking for. But all of that information you can, always find through a mentor. You can find by Googling it yourself, finding out what market research you need to do. But ultimately, it's just kind of going through the process of finding the initial statistics, the initial idea, the assumption that you have, and then doing the anthropological, psychological research and evaluation. So it's not just, sales isn't just going out and doing everything. A lot of it is reflection and thinking about, well, why did they, how would this change if something else changed? And just going through that process of reiterating all of your assumptions.
The secondary data will tell you if the world is ready for something like you. It will tell you if people's snack habits are what you think they are, if they're more worried about mental health and they agree with self-care. But the only way to find out if the world is ready for what you are doing and your brand and your product is to get primary data, is to go get it yourself.
And in our own learning about entrepreneurship, a lot of it is timing. And so you might have, the best product, but the world might not be ready for it. And so I would say that the data science side of it is, kind of affirming that, yes, this is something that this is the trend that the world is following. How can we play into that? And then the anthropological, psychological side is, how are we going to get that and really incorporate it and implement it into people's buying decisions and everyday life?
Awesome. And okay, it looks like we have another question here from Ellen. So, did you have any success in contacting larger scale companies, people who have gotten their product into stores across the US, et cetera?
I can start here. So there are two ways to answer this question. I think in terms of like selling to larger companies, yes, there are lots of walls to get there, but knowing your mentors and having advisors, that being larger companies within your industry, which is the other way to answer this question. If it's, did you have success talking to somebody who's gotten nationally distributed? Yes. I think San Antonio specifically is a good market for that because the food community is very solid. We all help each other. We're all willing to introduce each other to more people as well. Like if we're talking about that side of it, have we had any success talking to a company that's nationally distributed through Whole Foods? Yes, but we only got there because we met somebody who was regionally distributed through HEB and became good friends with them, and they happened to know another company who's nationally distributed. So again, I think that tiered system of mentorship allows you to have that network to say, hey, do you happen to know somebody at this level in our industry? And more often than not, they're going to know somebody, or at least know somebody that knows somebody, and you'll get in contact with them. I think that entrepreneurship, in a sense, and specifically the food industry, again, has lots of walls on them that can help you. Is the best bet.
Oh, yeah. You want warm introductions for sure. That's sales, that's mentoring. You have to start networking early on. Yeah.
And so, saying, oh, I know you through this, or I know you through someone else, or I've heard, having someone even asking them, will you connect me with them, is really helpful. And then it can maybe be intimidating reaching out to people, that you've never talked with, are they going to even want to talk with me? I think ultimately people want to help each other out. People want to do something, they want to do something good with their day. And so if they have the opportunity to help someone out, a lot of times people know that, they've gone through it. They know how hard it is. They know how important it is to get those connections, to get that advice. And so, trusting yourself that, yes, you are worth it. You are worth it for someone, to help you. And then trusting that the people you're reaching out to, if they're like most people, you might get a few no's, but if they're like most people, they want to be a good person who's helping out other people, that's doing something productive and helpful with their day.
make real connections with people and then leverage their network. And I would say in particular, become really good friends with the people who know people. There are, a ton of people in the business world who have a lot of contacts and a broad network. Find those people and make sure they like you.
Perfect. I love that. Okay, guys. Well, I mean, it's 2 minutes till, so I don't know if anybody else has any questions. If you do, you're more than welcome to unmute yourself right now before we close out. If not, then I'd, just kind of love to say thank you to both of our panelist groups for participating today as part of our special segment of food and beverage within the San Antonio Startup Week schedule. I know we weren't able to get this on the stream, but we'll re-release it shortly after I can upload it and then reshare it. So I appreciate you both. Is there anything else that you'd like to leave us with before we end?
I think that's it.
Yeah, I say
Thank you.
It's a very exciting journey, and we're really glad that we could talk with you guys today.
Yes, and best of luck to everybody trying to start something or already in the thick of it. Times are tough, but we're all going to get through it together, right?
Yep.
And anyone can start. You don't have to be, perfect at anything. We're students. If you like taking our example, like we're trying and we're working hard and we're making progress each and every day. And so just believe in yourself that you can put in the work and that you can start working towards something you really believe in.
I think Hector minded sharing a contact. I'm just going to put my email in there in the chat. I don't know if that's the best way.
I will also put our email.
And thanks for the great questions.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and email whenever.
Yeah.
Perfect. And so if you need to follow up at any point, just feel free to reach out to Launch SA as well. We can connect you with either team or both if you need to ask some follow-up questions. But thank you all. Now we're 1 minute over, so I'm going to go ahead and end the session, but thank you all again for participating.